My name is Lindsay, and today I'll be presenting on the Module 10 task assignment. I decided to choose Amelia. I'm trying a little bit of different format today to use a presentation, so I hope this helps a little bit. Just some background information about Amelia. She's 11. She has a learning disability. She has difficulty with academic tasks. This includes things such as multiple step, anything academic-wise that involves multiple steps, so math equations, specifically mathematical operations, long-term projects such as papers, any long-term project. And what she does is technically her reaction to it. She can break down long-term projects into individual steps, but she has the need for more organizational skills to help her with that. So this is a student I chose because I have a very similar childhood background to her. I had ADHD as my learning disability, and these are actually a lot of tasks that I had a lot of trouble doing daily. So I really felt like I could relate to her, and also wanted to look more into different visuals that may have helped me more, or I may have used that may have been useful. So these are the tasks that, the overall arching tasks that I kind of already talked about that she needs to be focused on and are kind of part of the problem, not part of the problem, sorry, that I need to be focused on every day. This includes multiple step mathematical equations, long-term projects, and long papers. Long-term projects and long papers kind of go hand in hand. And you'll see when I picked my two tasks that I kind of talk about both of them. So task number 1, I chose mathematical equations. This is because there's a lot of visual support that can help her, especially since for her, it's not the mathematical equation itself, it's just the steps to get to the end of it and kind of following along with that. A few visuals could be helpful. One that's pretty popular is acronyms, if could be used. PEMDAS is a really popular one. That's just an example where you do parentheses, exponents, multiply and divide, and add and subtract. It might be fine for her to come up with acronyms with a teacher, or just come up with some acronyms for different mathematical operations she's handling. This is just a standard one as an example, but this can be kind of utilized for different students. Coming up with acronyms, coming up with steps, and kind of remembering them for the big mathematical operations she has to deal with. Another one is a T-square, or called a four-square as well. I utilize this a lot. It's kind of splitting up her mathematical equations into steps to kind of help her have a clear visual of that and kind of follow along with it. This is just an example of that, where she can put step 1, step 2, step 3, and step 4 to kind of get just to kind of keep those clear in line in the step. I really have found that having a clear, concise step process really helps them. A last one I want to point out, and this is actually one I used when I was in school. My teacher had this for me, and I can still remember it to this day. She used to print this out for me, and they used to have a lot more space for doing the math problems and also for me to write. But it basically was for my practice problems. What she'd do is she'd do the steps that we'd have, so step 1, step 2, step 3, and then she'd have like like visually a red sentence, or visually like something underlined that said stop, check over steps. So she kind of reminded me to kind of stop and go over what I was going at. And then at step 4, step 5, and like maybe the final step. And then once again, she'd have that bright red visual of stop, go ahead and check over your work again. And those were the red visual, and also just that reminder was really helpful. So these are just a few different visuals I think could be helpful. Lastly, a reminder. Task number 1, task number 2. So task number 2 is long-term projects for Amelia, which she's going to have to deal with throughout the year. So it brings up the good point that she's capable of completing individual steps of a longer project. So I think something that would be useful for her is graphic organizers that could be put in her agenda. So when she gets a project, maybe sitting down with her group mates, or with her teacher, or with a parent, or someone who's helpful and can help her with this, and make a to-do list and to-do dates to kind of break down the long-term project into simpler, like achievable, smaller goals. So for instance, this to-do list, I have a task, priority level, and due date. This is just an example. So having, for instance, okay, so she's writing a paper. So the first task would be coming up with a subject, and that would be her first due date. And then another would be doing an outline, the second due date. Just breaking up this into simpler steps, and maybe having someone guiding with her with that for the first few, and then maybe later on she can start to individually do it on her own. Another one could be learning checklist. So helping her throughout the week keep check of whatever subject she's doing. What I had to do for me was to have a to-do list and then kind of throughout the week check off that I completed all my tasks on my individual subject to-do list. This might be a lot to start with, so maybe start small with the to-do list, but this is something also that could be useful. Also, at the end of the day checklist might be useful. This is just a simple example, but maybe once again, going back to having the smaller step projects for her long-term projects to kind of go over and check off. Another thing I think would be useful is even having something like we have in college where you have the list of due dates for each of her subjects and everything that's due, so she can kind of have a visual to kind of help her with that. And even a simple calendar might help. Lastly, reminder. This is something that my teacher did for me that I think might be useful. And this is something I've actually helped with another student to do in the past. Having a reminder that maybe a teacher can put throughout the student's agenda throughout the week. So having this as like a single signal of like, okay, I need you to stop and like go over what you've done so far for this week, for this project. Or, okay, reminder, you have to study for this. I think this is just a good visual to kind of help and remind her to like go over the tasks that she has for the week to kind of review. Thank you so much. This was my presentation on Amelia. Those were my 2 tasks, and those were a few more than just one example of different graphics and visuals that she could use. I really think it's important to kind of choose the graphic that fits the student to the best of their abilities. Since I don't have a lot of info about Amelia and what she prefers, that's why I try to choose a different variety. So a to-do list might work for one student, while as a calendar with just dates might help another. Acronyms might help a student, where maybe step 1, step 2 might help another. I think that's just important to remember. Thank you very much.